Don, do you want to do the intros?
Hi everyone, this is Sephardic World, brought to you by the Sephardic Genealogical Society. As always, we are grateful to our patrons who are here with us, and we welcome our viewers on YouTube. Today we have a question and answer session, and to be honest, we didn't receive very much questions before the meeting started, so we hope that you will come up with some interesting questions. And well, David.
Well, shall we start with the questions we received?
Mm-hmm.
And the first one is, I'm trying to find out more information about my grandfather, Jacob Yaakov Jack Shamaria, who was born in 1890 in Rhodes and died in 1960 in Seattle, Washington. His father was Joshua and his mother, Desiada Cohen. If you have any information about these two and their siblings or earlier ancestry, I would be grateful. My uncle Al has worked on family lineage for many, many years and has not had much success on the Shemaiah side of the family. Well, thank you for that, Felice. I think first thing to say is, of course, our focus is much more Western than Eastern Sephardic. I think several things to be said, and then perhaps we can throw it out to other people. Firstly, I think that the Ottoman archives, because the island would originally have been under the Ottoman Empire, are slowly creaking open. We'll see what happens with the election in Turkey soon, but hugely difficult to access. I don't know about the Italian records. The Italians took the islands from the Turks in, somebody help me, I think it's 1909, 1910, 1911, somewhere around then. And very likely the Italians will have some records of their period of occupation. I guess the place to start is which probably the uncle has, is with the American records. Something that we have found with families from the Ottoman Empire is it's always good to ask around the family whether anybody had any foreign nationality. Very often people, for example, would have French or Italian or perhaps Spanish or British nationality, or indeed Austro-Hungarian. And if they do, the archives of those countries, the consular archives often contain not just records of births and marriages and deaths, but also wills, information from consular courts, and so forth. But really, I mean, apart from that, I would suggest, obviously, there's a museum in Rhodes. There is a community in Seattle who will probably have some idea. There's also a museum in Athens who may be able to advise. Not sure. Tom, do you have any?
There's the publication Sephardic Horizons, yes, who publish regularly about the community and roads. Maybe you can find something in there. It's online. It has a new issue every quarter of the year, and it's generally interesting. It does not have much Western Sephardic stuff, but it's good on Corfu, Rhodes, Egypt, Northern Africa, the Levant, etc.
I think also, of course, if you can find a male relative of that family, to ask them to have a DNA, Y-DNA test with the Avotaynu DNA project, and see what that throws up. Just a reminder to everybody, both on Zoom and on YouTube, if you've got any questions, please either type them or on Zoom, just raise your hands and we shall get to you. We have a question. Adrian, I think you're raising your hand. So do you want to unmute yourself? I can try and unmute you.
Are you there? Am I unmuted?
Yes,
No.
yes.
Yes, okay. Hold on. Something happened. I don't know what to do with this. The family is going to be going to Portugal this summer, as I think some of you all know. And if you have any suggestions, we're going to be going to Lisbon, Coimbra, and Oporto and Tomar. If there's anything that you all can suggest that will aid us in trying to find anything at all about Cohen Diaz Vedos or Moraes or Curiel, that's all MyHeritage. So anybody's suggestion would be greatly appreciated.
When I was in Lisbon, I went to the Torre de Tombo, the sort of national archives, which is in the campus of the University of Lisbon. But I wasn't allowed to see any of the documents that they have digitized already, because, you know, for preservation purposes, which is a shame, because I wanted to you know, touch documents that were about my family. Also, the only person there who spoke really fluent English was the guy on the door who had worked in London for a number of years. And there was a lady upstairs who was showing me how to search better, but she was so excited to actually meet somebody who's sort of got ancestors in the records that she was talking so quickly that my Portuguese just didn't keep up. So it wasn't a terribly helpful meeting. I mean, obviously in Lisbon especially, you can go to sort of Rocio and, you know, the places where the Inquisition did their stuff, but you'll go there anyway, because that's the central part of
Right.
of Lisbon.
Yes, we recently heard from Carla Vieira that not all the archives of Lisbon were destroyed in the earthquake of 1745 or something like that. And it seems that the notarial archive survived somewhere. And we'll ask Carla Vieira if she knows where they are and if you can locate them there.
Tone, before you go on, there's someone asked a question in the chat. What's the group that Tone just mentioned? Did you cover that? Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, asking about Carla Vieira.
We'll have to ask Carla.
No, Jacob was asking. Carla is part of an academic project at the new University of Lisbon, I think, and various other institutions in Portugal, who are both studying the Western Sephardic diaspora and also working as we are with the Nação Hebraica project on using AI to read manuscript documents. We've had her speak, and we'll certainly have her back again. But I don't really. I mean, the thing I found with Portugal is that the sort of Jewish tourism staff is, you know, a Disneyfied version of pre-1496. I mean, they have what they call sort of tourist routes or whatever. I mean, you could go to Belmont, where they still have a sort of remnant community who, you know, Jewish tourists are taken to see, but that's on the other side. I mean, if you look at Portugal, there's basically a spine of mountains going down the middle. That's on the other side, so it gets a bit
It's not going to happen.
involved. Yeah. Yeah, I don't have. I mean, apart from saying Portugal's like a wonderful place to visit, and it's sort of faded grandeur. I'm not sure a huge amount, and unless of course you just find out where family members might have been living and just go and visit those.
Oh,
those towns, but...
that was in Lisbon. He came from Lisbon, so.
Mine have documentation about Coimbra.
Mm.
So
Well,
anyway, thank you all.
Yeah. And David just mentioned Anasawa Hebraica, and that's a project that is very promising. And you will find lots of stuff about your family there also. We have been going through the annual accounts of Bevis Marks, the earliest years.
I have those.
Yes, and we are making them readable through Transcribus. Maybe we'll be able to demonstrate something of that later on.
What was the first name you mentioned in this part of your conversation? I didn't quite understand it.
Cohendas Vedo.
No, well, of course, that I didn't hear you say then. I know that word, that name. Okay, thank you all.
Okay. You see, we have a couple of questions on DNA. We were rather hoping that sort of Adam might turn up. Tom, do you want to go through
Maybe
that?
someone in the public has a burning question.
Yeah, as I say, I'm really sorry. Last time we had this meeting, we had hundreds of questions. This time's total silence. Yeah, we have a question, but it's another. First of all, thank you. Yes, somebody on YouTube is saying that Italy took Rhodes in 1912, and 1947 it became part of Greece. Somebody is talking about DNA, which we are no experts at all. I did a DNA test on MyHeritage and I got 11.9% Sephardic North African. My mother got almost 16% and my paternal uncle 21. So I think we may have some Sephardic ancestors. Grandparents were Italians from Sicily and Calabria. Surnames Anania, Pisano, Budia, Sciotto, Papaladi, and many more, but not able to find documents to verify that they were Jews, and have records back to 1780. Most were baptized as Catholics. So, I mean, obviously, the first thing to say is we are not experts in any possible way on DNA. We have friends who are, but none of them are here today. I think indeed, speak of the devil. Shall we jump that and come back? If we can, if he's willing to help. Adam, welcome. We've just had some questions on DNA. Shall we go to Richard first, if you'd like to unmute?
Yes, thank you, David. I'm descended from the Nunes Cardoso and De Chavez families through Bevis Marks. Now, I know that there were the same families in Amsterdam at more or less the same sort of time, but what I'd like to know is there a way that I can find out where my ancestors came from? Actually, did they come from Amsterdam or did they come from Portugal direct?
Con, do you want to?
Yes, both is possible.
Yeah.
They could have come directly, or they could have come through Amsterdam, or one family split up and part of it moved to Amsterdam, another part to London. It's an interesting family. also in the sense that they produced one of the first Jewish members of the Supreme Court in the USA.
Yeah.
And he is definitely from London, so he will be related to you. But we have to take a closer look at this family to be sure. One point to start is the archives of Bevis marks, of course, and they are partly online through the National Library of Israel, who digitized the minute books and the annual accounts and some other stuff. And it takes a lot of time to go through them. But as we mentioned, Anasao Hebraica is busy making the annual accounts readable through the use of Transcribus, which is a software program that reads handwritten text. It needs a lot of training, but we already developed a Portuguese, English, Hebrew language model that serves us well in making the annual accounts accessible. So far we did the first 2 years, but there are many more years available through the National Library of Israel, and we hope to do them all in a few years' time. And maybe David Silvera may say something about that project.
Well, so far we've got 1676 to 1690, 1680, and maybe a little bit past that online and accessible, so that you can actually go there and search for names or events. When you do go there, you'll find there's a glossary, and it'll explain to you that people who wrote these did not have the orthography standards that we're accustomed to. There's no standard spelling, punctuation, capitalization, or anything like that. So you're going to see Portuguese transcribed the way it was written, and you'll have to use your sounding to interpret the words and come up with some answers. But certainly, and a few months ago, we did demonstrate circumcisions that we had found in the first book and of accounts. We've also found people arriving in London and people leaving as well. So that information is available for searching, and I find it's absolutely remarkable. I've been doing the transcription, so I get to first read, and it's amazing the detail that's in there. Not always appropriate to everybody, but it's historically very interesting.
Thank you, David.
Do you want to? Shall we have a quick show of it, or is that too early? A quick.
Well, it's not terribly difficult to do, and
can we show the website to people, or?
Sure, absolutely, it's public, totally
Okay.
public. Yes, we just have. This is the first showing of it outside of our team, so you need to understand that this is kind of you've been waiting for it. I know. Okay.
Okay, then if that's okay, I'll
Can I share?
There we are. Shall I do a search on Azevedo? As David said, there's a million different spellings. Oh, here we go. Joseph Cohen de Azevedo. I've got quite a few. 10 pages. Okay, so they were very early family in London. Perhaps, David, is it better if you do this?
It's either way. It's intended for everybody to use, so you can do it. Or I have some other. You could give me some names, and I can put them in there if you want. Whatever you choose.
Okay, I think perhaps it's better if you do the demo. So let me stop sharing, and if you want to to share your screen.
Okay, I'll share my screen. So this is a home page, and it's our breaker. We've chosen a little logo here which has a small family tree and with lots of roots. We said this sure looks like the way Portugal was to us, you know, and the way we are coming out of Portugal. And just without going into details, we're also in. It translates into Portuguese, but we're basically working in English, but translating into Portuguese right now. You can browse the books that are available. We'll deal with tags another time. You can search, and you can search with fuzzy search, and you can call the glossary up, and this will give you a multi-page document of how all the pitfalls of orthography for one thing, and then words that we've come across, some of which you understand, and a few we don't understand. But it's the spellings of the same word, many different ways. It's quite fascinating to see as you go through that. So from a search, let's go to browse. And in the browse mode, you're going to see that we've got two documents out there, 5436 to 38 and 39 to 40. So that covers about 4 years. If we want to search in those documents, we can browse a document by just selecting it, and you can see the kind of things that's on the page. So on the left hand side, you'll see the accounts. On the right hand side, this was Abraham de Porto's accounts, and you can see everything that he gave money for. It was while doing some of my searching, I thought, you know, I always think of forasteros or foreigners, and so ORES, I think it is. I tell you what, we'll do search out. We'll turn on the fuzzy search, because the spelling is so variable, and you can find, well, in this case, if you're seeing, and these people have given money for forasteros, the support of forasteros, but a lot of mentions. Let's choose a page. I think this was a Senor Benjamin Nunez, gave money for, in honor of his sogra. Tom, help me. Sogra is a cousin, uncle, aunt.
Brother-in-law, I thought.
Yeah, that's something.
And forasteros. Okay, so we've got some forasteros there. I know one person who's here might be interested in this.
The buzz.
We've got two there. Let's try it with a Z. Oops. Jacob deposits in several different places. Interestingly enough, you can actually search. We'll find somebody who went to Barbados. Okay, let's turn on fuzzy. Joseph Pereira here. Somebody made with the last name Senior went there, and Senor, and Pereira went there. Jacob Senior with his sobrino. We also find folks went to Jamaica from in here. So let me go back to you, David and Ton, and I can do any particular search anyone's interested in, but you'll be able to do this yourself from home. anaseohebraica.transcribus.eu.
Maybe you can put the link in chat.
I did already. But to return to Richard's question, so it looks like this family was here very early. So they could be in the Amsterdam records, or indeed they could be in the Portuguese records. Richard, have you looked in the Inquisition records? It doesn't necessarily mean you can make a link, but you can perhaps find the name there.
No, I haven't looked in the Inquisition records.
So let me just see if I can. I suppose actually the sensible thing would be to look at Amsterdam first.
Yeah.
So being extremely lazy. Well, Tom should probably do this, but I'll do this, and he can tell me where I've gone wrong. So the lazy person's way is to go to we was we, who was who, Azevedo, and just say put in Azevedo as a spelling. Search. Okay, there's going to be about 1 million, so we can just try and narrow it down to Noord-Holland. So that takes us down to 288. And being very lazy, we can look at Truan, the marriages, try to get that in order. Okay, so we have a Moses Cohen d'Azevedo who is in 1642. We click on that, and on that. Sorry, can anyone see which one it is? I'm blind. Maybe. So my computer is being repaired, so I'm like working on a bloody tractor at the moment. Let's fix that. And I've lost it, so perhaps we should have asked Tom to do it. See if we can make that bigger. Oh, here we are. Moses Cohen d'Azevedo van Lisbona. Here we go. Doesn't necessarily mean, you know, obviously you'd have to find if this guy is related to you.
The question was about Nunes Cardozo.
And to Shabbos.
I do beg your pardon. Then I will shut up, and Ton, you can take over because I'm an idiot.
Let me see. Wie was wie?
Yep. Going to share your screen.
Oh yes, sorry.
We was we is a much easier way than going straight to the Amsterdam archives. It's just easier and faster to search.
You can see it now?
Yes.
Yes.
You get here 62 results. And of course, if you also try Cardozo with a Z, then you might find more hits.
Yeah.
If you click on date, it will sort this chronologically. And you find a few Cardozo Nunes, Nunes Cardozo. If you click on this, then it will show you an image. But if you click on the image, nothing happens. You have to go to source, which takes you to the Amsterdam archives. Then you can click the image. And it's one of 6 marriage bans on this page. We have to find him. Isaac Austin's, Isaac Merritt. Here he is, Samuel Cardozo Nunez from Port, which is Porto, 30 years old. His address is here, the Joodse Uitmarkt. His parents are dead. He is assisted with Samuel Enriquez Faro, and he marries to Hannah Abanatar from Amsterdam. And she is assisted with her brother Emmanuel Abanatar. And there are their signatures, also nice to see. But I think Cardozo Nunez might not be related to Nunez Cardozo. But anyway, you can go here and you can use this site, which is the site of the Amsterdam City Archives, and click on indexes and repeat this. Uitgebreid zoeken is extensive search, and you can put in the name Nunez Cardozo, and if you put the tilde in here, then it will search fuzzy. And here also you can click on the date, making it chronological. And there are a few without the date. And again, you have these Cardozo Nunez. Here's the first Nunez Cardozo, 1683. And you can browse here, go to the next page. And here you have the first male Nunez Cardozo. Again, click on the image. And here he is, the same person.
And Port.
From Porto. So the Nunez, the Cardozo Nunez or Nunez Cardozo might be from Porto. And if you go to the website of Torre do Tombo, then you can search for Nunez Cardozo and Porto, or O Porto, and maybe have a few relevant hits. But all in all, it's a lot of work to do. But the sources are there, they are online, and you can consult them anytime.
Thank you very much.
Shall we just have a quick play with the Torre do Tombo?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're there.
Okay. I'm not as fast typist, so it's with an S, I think.
I always put in the word Judaismo, just
72 pages, 10 hits on a page, so that's 72 hits. And there's a trick where you can search the Inquisition archives. I don't use that trick. I go to the last page. It's working very fast just now. And you see here PTTT. That's the website of Torre do Tombo, and then TSO stands for help me, David. It's
Tribunal de Santo Oficio, I
Yeah.
guess. Tribunal of the Holy Office.
and there are a lot of hits. If you click one, you get the details. And
Can I show you a faster way?
yes,
Okay.
I'll stop
Um,
sharing.
So, another way, if you have a slightly less common name, is just go to the advanced search and just put in the title, start with the word processo, and then put the name. I find it sometimes the reference codes work and sometimes they don't, so it's just leave them. And if we just do a search on Nunes Cardoso. You see, we've just got 2 pages, and we're just looking for, but these are people hopefully called Nunes Cardoso, or they have Nunes. So we've got, okay, Maria, she's a bit late. So we have a Diogo Nunes Cardoso, 1691, Trancoso, Chavez. Of course, if a family were in Porto, they could have, I mean, they could have lived there forever, or they could have come from somewhere else. Pinel. I mean, obviously, there's no guarantee any of these were related, but so let us suppose. Yeah, this person's accused, Antonio Nunes Cardoso is accused of Judaizing. So if you go to the digital representation, essentially what you need to do is just click through all of these until you reach the genealogy section, and then you have a few pages of biography. But obviously there's no guarantee that the London family is related to the family in Amsterdam, and no guarantee that the Amsterdam family is related to the one in Portugal, but it's quite a small universe, so it's certainly possible. Yeah, but the work that David's doing with A Nação Hebraica will hopefully just blow open the doors, because previously we've just been using, I don't think it will show because I've got my background on, we've got the 6-volume Bevis Marks records, which are quite easy to access, but the work sort of David is doing will just essentially open up everything for us, so quite soon we'll know much more. Thank you for that. Are there any more questions?
Yes, and the bus.
Oh, do you want to unmute, Anna?
Yeah, sorry, I did send you the question just because it was slightly complicated, but the last time we had the opportunity to ask questions, I was saying that I was looking for an ancestor, Abraham de Pas. There are many de Passes spelt in those days with a Z, and they're in Livorno, they're in Bayonne, and obviously there are some in London. David Silveira very kindly found a Jacob for me, but none that I've been able to link to the Abraham and his 2 sons, Jacob and Isaac, who all 3 are circumcised and listed in the Bevis Marks records as being circumcised in April 1727. I know from being able to track the marriages and deaths and births that I'm almost certainly descended from Jacob, who was 11 and circumcised in April 1727. And when Ton last time suggested that I was looking for where Abraham might have come from, and as I say, there are many possibilities, but you did suggest, Ton, that I looked in the lists of Vindos to Portugal. I find in the Vindos to Portugal that there is a Dr. Vicente de Pas, who has come with his 2 sons, Isaac and Jacob. Interestingly, beside the name Dr. Vicente de Pas is the shortened version of Abraham, ABM, and this ABM appears twice in the Bevis Marks, once when he's a godfather to somebody else. The Vicente disappears altogether. And so I just wonder if it's reasonable to assume that this Abraham Vicente de Pas is probably the Abraham I'm looking for. And given that he and his 2 sons are, all 3 are circumcised in 1727, can I assume that in all probability they haven't come through Livorno or Amsterdam, where presumably they could already have been circumcised, and that thus they really have come directly from Portugal? Would this be a reasonable supposition? I mean, I know it's unprovable, but it's a question that I put?
In terms of circumcision, you are supposed to circumcise a boy at 8 days.
Yes.
Even if it is Shabbat, even if it is a Sabbath,
Yeah.
even if it is Yom Kippur, the most holiest day. So for somebody to be circumcised at the age of 11,
And the two men are adults.
Yes.
Yeah.
It clearly,
Christians.
So I would suggest that your hypothesis is right, that they've come from somewhere not Jewish.
That was really my question. And I suppose we've gone through obviously the archives of the Torre del Tombo. I suppose also there are parish records in Portugal if they have been practicing as Christians, but it's a bit like a needle in a haystack. But it's just, I'm coming to the conclusion, it's these, because Abraham had two sons, and Jacob and Isaac, and the David Silveira, I think, comes from Isaac's line because they went to America and Jamaica, and I come from Jacob's line, which more or less stayed initially in London. No, I'm pretty wrong, actually. A lot of Jacob's sons do go to America and Jamaica. But it's just, if I can pin them down to this Abraham Vincente de Paz, the Vincente almost disappears after the circumcisions. That's it, it's dropped.
I think you might want to take a look at the annual accounts.
Okay.
And then the annual account of the year in which these sons were circumcised.
Yeah.
And the year before, the year after.
Yeah.
You'll find paying members in lists, and you will find the poor receiving support, and you'll find promesas paid by everyone. And I think that this Vicente de Paz or Abraham de Paz must be there. It's a 99% chance that they will be mentioned. And then, yeah, it's almost sure that they are there, because they were either rich or poor, and if they fell in between rich and poor, then they gave voluntary gifts to the synagogue. And following them through the years will give piecemeal additional information.
I will look there. And I just wondered if anybody had done any research on what members of the community, how they earned their living, apart from the obvious ones of trading. Any records in early Georgian London as to what members of the community were doing, whether there are trade directories or anything, whether anybody can be tracked through these, and when anybody had any experience of looking into this.
How early?
Well, again, I'm talking about, I suppose, the 1730s, 1740s.
I think that there are sort of a couple of very general books. The London Metropolitan Archives probably has, or they'll be online. And there are, if you go onto Google Books, there are general merchant directories, but I'm not sure if individuals are going to be mentioned. Again, there it might be that the Amsterdam Notarial Archives can help out, because the archives in London don't seem to exist anymore, because very likely if somebody was a merchant, they're very likely trading with Amsterdam as well as anywhere else they're trading with.
Yeah.
So going back to circumcision, just a little piece of Jewish trivia, that I think the Spanish and Portuguese Jews are unique in calling sort of using the words godfather and godmother, which is of course very Christian. The godfather, I know, is correctly called a sandak, and this is the person who has the baby on his lap when the baby is being circumcised. I have no idea what happens if you've got a full-grown adult. It would be a bit awkward. And I think the godmother I'm sure there is a Hebrew name, but I can't remember it if I ever knew it. I think the godmother is the lady who takes the baby from the mother into the room with the mohel to be circumcised. But that's just, you know, a little trivia. Have we just lost Anna?
No, sorry, I'm here.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, so that's
Well, that's helpful. I think in all probability, given that I've looked in so many other places and found plenty of Abraham, Jacob, and Isaac depathes. I mean, there are lots of them all over the place. I think in all probability that they didn't come from Amsterdam or Livorno, that given their circumcision as adults, Jacob was the youngest at 11. All three marry in 1732.
yes.
Presumably, Abraham's is not a second marriage, but he's marrying his wife and the mother of these two boys.
Yes.
And then both the sons, Jacob and Isaac, marry members of the community. Isaac marries Ribka Lopez Pereira, and Jacob marries Ribka de Samuel Torres.
Did they leave wills?
Well, I have managed to track Jacob's will, or what is probably Jacob's will. And the reason I think it's Jacob's will is that it was proved in London in 1781, which is the date upon which his wife, Ribka, dies.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to read, and it doesn't tell us very much, except that it was proved in London, but translated from both Latin and Italian, and mentions a father, Abraham, a brother, Isaac, and basically he's appointing Isaac as his administrator. But it's obviously, given that it's Florence, it talks about Florence and Livorno. He was obviously potentially trading with those countries, with Italy. However, I couldn't find any depasse with Jacob of the right age and dates in the Italian archives or the Livorno ones.
Okay. Did you look at Alan Edjar's?
Yeah. I tracked them all the marriages.
Okay.
Just none of the dates really fitted, but there are plenty of depasse there. Plenty of depasse.
I'm no expert on names, but I would guess de Paz sounds more like it came from Spain than from Portugal. But
yeah, maybe. I think was it Michael Weiss was saying that in probability the de indicated it's probably topographical, so there must be a place called Paths somewhere, and I found places both in Spain and Portugal. Not very helpful, really. But they obviously took Iberian Peninsula and its Spanish names or Portuguese names.
yeah. Well, thank you for that. And we have a question from Susan. Are there any databases of cemeteries in Turkey, Istanbul? My paternal great-grandparents stayed in Turkey. My grandfather and two of his brothers left. My great-grandfather's name was Haim Sadaka. I don't know his wife's name, but I think her first name started with a B. I think I found the graves of my great-uncle Abram and his wife Sultana. Abram would be the brother of my grandfather, David Sadaka, who came to the US around 1905, and with a few with the name David Sadaka. Well, the good news is there is now a website called, I think, I'll find the link. I think it's called Jewish Stones. I found it. Okay, I'll put it in the chat. It's not the easiest website to navigate. jewishturkstones.tau.ac.il. So it's an Israeli academic website, and hopefully that will help. If there is a change of government in the Turkish elections, of course, it is possible then over the next several years that the archives will be sort of more open and privacy laws will be less strict. But let's not count our chickens before they hatch.
We had one question in advance about empty DNA. What are the possibilities of research into female lineages using mtDNA? Maybe Adam Brown would like to elucidate us on that, if he is available. Adam? Yeah.
Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Happy Mother's Day to you all from the United States.
Yes. Thank you.
It is something that we have wanted to do. We have the data for it. Unlike, Y-DNA, you don't have the benefit of surnames to sort of give you guides. It certainly is possible to do both origins research on the origins of the Sephardi population, and it is also possible to do mitochondrial DNA for genealogical purposes. But again, you have to have if you have a tree and you're trying to establish that two women who lived 400 years ago were sisters, that's certainly doable if you have a direct maternal line. But we have the material in our freezer. We can easily run mitochondrial DNA tests, and it's been an ambition of ours. And Wim Penix does have a page on our shared data tree showing the different lineages of the Sephardi population, both paternal and maternal. But I will confess to you, we haven't focused on that. If we had the funding and the initiative, we could undertake it immediately. It's certainly something we have in mind, and it's something that Raquel Levy-Toledano has actively advocated for within our team, and it's something that would be specifically for her cohort of Moroccan men who she's tested, and they're almost all Moroccan on both sides. So we would, just as we have found that there's a great deal of overlap between the Moroccan men and the Western Sephardi men on the Y chromosome, we expect we would find overlap as well among the Moroccan women and the Western Sephardi women. Part of the problem we have is that a great deal of our Western Sephardi men who we've tested have either married outside Judaism or have married outside the Sephardi community. So they have, we've been fortunate being able to use those names like we discussed earlier, Nunch Cardozo and other well-known families, but we've been able to track them down and test them because of the connection of the surname. It's probably very unusual that in those families that have been living in places like London continuously for 400 years, 300 years, that they would have had been so strict in marrying Sephardi women that we would actually find usable mitochondrial DNA from them that would lead back to Portugal. The best case we have, I think, is the Moroccan men. That's where I would test first if we wanted to get a picture of what Sephardi women looked like back in the days.
Thank you. I have a question myself. I've heard from a few people that they tested their Y-DNA and it turned out that they didn't have Sephardic ancestry at all. And I wonder how often that happens in terms of percentages, and is there an explanation for that?
Well, it depends which people you're talking about, Tom. If you're talking about Ashkenazi men who've tested, who expected to find Sephardi Y-DNA, they're all welcome to come to London to hear Michael and David talk about the phenomenon of fanciful Sephardi ancestry of Ashkenazi men. That doesn't surprise me. It's basically what we have found is we have two kinds of results. One kind is Ashkenazi people who think they have Sephardi DNA. That almost never turns out to be true. Okay. Then we have a second group, Ashkenazi men who have no idea who turn out to have Sephardi Y DNA. That happens all the time. We have a large number of people, particularly from places like Galicia and Romania and Moldova and Hungary, where we find men with Ashkenazi identities or self-identities who clearly have Ashkenazi Y chromosomes. But we also, as I said,
Sephardi, you mean?
what did I say? I meant
Ashkenazi.
Sephardi, yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
I meant Sephardi.
But
Well, you mean not non-Ashkenaz, not necessarily Sephardic sometimes, right? Or is that what you're
Correct.
saying?
Thank you, Randy. Yes,
Oh,
we find men who have non-Ashkenazi DNA. We do find some who have DNA that pretty clearly comes from, from Iberia. But in the main, we don't really know the answer to that. We have a lot of men who came up from the Ottoman Empire. That was the route. I mean, the number of men whom we found who came directly to Eastern Europe from Spain is small. And what's interesting is we have found them in places like Sweden, among Christian men who clearly have Sephardi Y chromosomes, and Spanish Jewish Y chromosomes. So that's a mystery that I think will be lovely to unravel.
yes, but I was talking about people with Sephardi names who tested, and it turned out that they didn't have Sephardic ancestry.
Well, how do they identify these Sephardi names exactly? Give me an example.
Well, I'm a good example. I mean, my Y DNA is just bog standard Iberian. So, presumably at some point somebody married, misbehaved, or something else.
Well, this happened, typically, David, this happened like 500 AD.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't think it was any misbehavior. I think we have enough of these all occurring within a very short period of time to suggest that there was something going on in Roman Iberia in which pagan men were embraced by the Jewish community, or their children. I mean, this is more than occasional. We have at least 25 lineages, including my own and yours, which demonstrably became part of the Jewish community. The Y chromosome became part of the Jewish community in late Roman times in Iberia. So there's a story there that we haven't really figured out yet, but it's important. It represents about 5% of all the Y chromosomes in the Jewish population. So it's something worth investigating. But again, Ton, people having Sephardi surnames, thinking they have Sephardi surnames living in Eastern Europe or Central Europe, we're just not finding it.
Okay.
I
hesitate to name names.
Okay.
Because of privacy, but I'll send you the names that are.
There are a lot of names that sort of sound Sephardi. Okay.
Yeah.
That may not be Sephardi. I mean, I'll talk about the Harlap family. I mean, I'm happy to talk about the Harlaps since I'm their historian. I'm now following the demise of Arthur Menton. Evan Wolfson and I are basically the two remaining Harlap researchers. The Harlap family has a tradition that they descend from Portugal, and Harlap was an acronym for the exiles from Portugal. And we have found that Harlap, there are all kinds of different flavors of Harlap, and that very often the surname passed through a daughter to a yeshiva bachur son-in-law, and that the Y chromosome, the tradition doesn't match the reality because the surname took a circuitous route. So that's one thing. And then there are other names that sort of sound Sephardi. Okay, that's the second category of people. And then there's the third category, which is people who, for one reason or another, and Randy Schoenberg is the world expert on this topic, who simply bought yeches, to give themselves a more interesting story to tell during the late 19th century. So, it's that being said, this particular group that I've come to know and love every Sunday afternoon during the last couple of years since COVID, are certainly have no concerns. Those who I've tested in this group have uniformly proved out to be Iberian in origin, and they match other Iberian Jews around the world. But not only that, in some cases, and you know who you are, you match families from Jamaica that identify as African American. Okay, and so going back several hundred years, so we clearly see a common pattern, and we see this pattern in Suriname as well. I think you discussed earlier. Were you discussing Nunch Cardozo earlier? Was that something?
Yeah. And
So Nunch Cardozo is an interesting lineage. It only matches itself, except it matches an Enriquez family from Jamaica, not Ainsley's family. But actually, I'm gonna stop talking about that. But they do match other families, particularly one from the Cape Verde Islands. So that's it. When we find people from the Cape Verde Islands matching Jews, or we find Jews matching Nueva Leon, Mexico, that's very comforting, because we have solid history behind those migrations. Anyway, that's a long-winded answer to your question.
But thank you. Most of the questions we hear about DNA relate to tests that have been done with MyHeritage, who have a Sephardic breakdown. The question I have, I mean, the cynical part of me thinks, well, it's just a marketing ploy, because to talk about haplogroups is not going to sell testing kits. But I mean, that's being cynical. But how well based are these tests that can sort of tell you that you have X% from North Africa and Y% Eastern Sephardic, and 2% came from a suburb of Alexandria, kind of thing?
We don't really put much stock in them. I mean, they're interesting. When we look at them, when we look at those tests, we're not really looking at the percentage of origins. We are interested to see who the matches are.
Yeah.
The individuals who match, because for us, I mean, we know these communities so well now after 6 years of testing, that if I find you matching Elaine Farhi or the Gindi family, or the Dwex, I know, forget Egypt. We know we're finding you in Aleppo and Damascus. And if you're matching any of our 150 men we tested in Morocco, all of whom we did autosomal on, then we're gonna know there's a Moroccan component. So we're really now not really looking too much at that. I don't really have much confidence in it. But
do you know how they come up with their percent? Presumably they have some sort of base population, but is this self-reporting, or have they studied it themselves, or do you have any idea?
Well, I imagine that they have done. I mean, we've done it in some of our population. When we do a population study, we do a base study as well, if it's autosomally related, and we will take a group of people. You need 150 or so, in our opinion, to do a meaningful study. And we find, we do a base study, and we look for commonality among the individuals, and we use that as our signal, of origins from that community. And we find them. I mean, we just did 100 men in Kochi, India.
Yes.
And we've, as I said, 150 there. We haven't really spent a lot of resources on autosomal. We'll use autosomal if we can't figure out the Y-DNA result. Okay, if we get a Y-DNA result from a singleton male that just doesn't make any sense to us, we will run a mitochondrial DNA test to see if there's some kind of non-parental event or something else going on. Or are we really truly seeing a brand new Jewish Y chromosome never reported before? And so sometimes we'll find out that this is a person who shows, 99% Ashkenazi ancestry, which means there may have been an NPE, but if it was before the 19th century. It was a very old NPE. We don't put much stock in things like 2% Sephardi, that kind of thing. We don't.
Do you know how they're doing this? Are they saying what? Because obviously, people, especially Jews, move around a lot. Are they saying, well, this is the population that, say, went to Morocco in or before 1492, or I'm just trying to
they have no way they have no way of knowing that. I mean,
Yeah.
They just have none. They haven't done that research. I know Family Tree DNA uses the uses the Turkish autosomal results, as their base population for Sephardi. They don't use Morocco. They use Turkey. But it's tough to do that. I mean, there was a Sephardi population that met up with an Ottoman population, a Romaniot population 500 years ago. So it's almost impossible to distinguish them at this late age. I would say an interesting sample would be Mograshim from Livorno would be an excellent sample, because they were marrying each other until the middle of the 19th century. So if Ellen Najjar, could find us some family, I hate to use the word pure-blooded, but that's the word, Mograshi families who came to from Livorno to Tunisia, in the 18th century, that would be a very good, and to me, that would be the most reliable Western Sephardi sample you could find, because those families did stick together, and they did remain endogamous. I mean, one of the issues about about autosomal is that the reliability of the results, of the base population that they're using as to compare their samples to, is how endogamous the original population was, that they're depending upon. So if you're looking at Morocco, you're looking at a highly endogamous population. If you're looking at the Portuguese Jews of Livorno, you'd be looking at a pretty endogamous population, at least till the middle of the 19th century. Persia, you're looking at an endogamous population. Baghdad, you're looking at endogamous, or Urmia. I mean, these are highly, or the Jewish community of Aleppo, the Dweks and the Gindis, etc. These were highly endogamous populations. And so I think you could reasonably rely on them, and probably true of the Ottoman, probably the populations of Turkey as well. Michael Wass would be the expert on that.
Yeah.
But it really depends on how endogamous, and the least endogamous community I've ever run across is the Western Sephardi.
Yeah, totally non-discriminating.
But I will tell you, a very, very important part of our Y-DNA study of the Western Sephardi has come from men in the Caribbean who identify as Black, but when we get their white chromosomes back, they're shooting. They clearly were Jewish, had Jewish parents, like Harry Belafonte. Yeah. These were men from Sephardi families, and they match. When we match I'm trying to think of what families we tested down there, but Cohen Jesurin family. We've tested a lot of these families. Cohen d'Azevedo, now we've tested.
Yes.
The Cohen Labato family, which we just learned matches the d'Azevedo family. So these are families that where we find them both in the Jewish population and the non-Jewish population in the Caribbean.
Because it's quite challenging, I think, and we haven't really got an answer. We're increasingly sort of hearing from people who sort of come along and say, well, I've got X percentage, Sephardic ancestry or whatever from one of these tests. And I think the only thing one can say is, well, do you match? Do you have a direct patrilineal line you can test? And, have you searched in the archives? But I think most people are wanting a quick answer, so it's not.
Yeah. All I say is Mazel Tov.
Yes. Okay. Francis, you're desperately waving at us.
Yes, I'm just wondering if Abulafia Halevi comes up anywhere in all this. As far as I can tell, when we tracked our own ancestry through in a rather kind of casual way, because I grew up in such a Sephardi atmosphere, it never occurred to me to worry about whether I was there or not, or whether they were there or not. They just seemed to be there in Manchester. So is there any sort of track through of the Abulafias and the Halevis?
Well, the Abulafias we've tested.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
We've done advanced testing on them. I'm just going to pull it up right now at the Y chromosome level, anyhow.
oh, right.
And just give me a sec here. I'm just going to pull it up.
Well, they were in Didsbury, in Manchester, when I knew them.
Oh, well, okay. So we have them. We tested the family from Gallipoli, which is where they spread from. They left Spain and they show up in Turkey, and particularly in Gallipoli, and we see them. Then we see them in Hebron, in Palestine,
Right.
and then we see them. Of course, we stub our toe on the famous bakery in Jaffa, right? Balafia Bakery.
Yes.
Those of you who are in Israel, and
Yes.
you'll know that family is Muslim. The Balafia
I
family
didn't.
of the bakery. And you will find out that that family is if you'll spare me a minute, David, I'll tell you the story about that family.
Yeah.
Rabbi Avalafia settled in Hebron and had a bunch of sons, and there was a orphan boy who he took into a Muslim orphan boy who he took into his family and raised him. And when the boy grew up and went out on his own, he, out of honor for his adopted father or foster father, he took the name Avalafia. And this is and if you go to the bakery and you ask a member of the family, they'll tell you, of course, that's the story, which is a rather charming story.
Lovely. Yes.
But the Avalafia family is certainly from Spain. I mean, when we look at their Y chromosome, I'm just trying to see. We have a number of other families. They come from a very large lineage called you can write this down, AB 124. And in the Avalafia family, we have a number of families from Greece, but the Y chromosome looks like at some point something coming out of Iberia. But they match the Aragos family, which is a well-known family from the Ottoman Empire. And who else we got here? And Elisir family, which is also coming out of that region, and Dostis, Dostis, another family out of that region. So it's got solid, connections to Anatolia, but we think it comes out of Spain.
That's interesting because the family I knew shouting away like mad in Arabic in Manchester in the 50s had no doubts about themselves at all, as far as I could tell. And nor was I ever given any. We didn't question it, we didn't debate it, we just were there. And I had to go.
From where? You mean Spain?
They were from Spain. They were talking about exile from Spain, if they ever spoke about it.
Well, Francis, you have to understand, we question everything. Okay, that's just our nature.
I'm not blaming you at all. I'm talking about my auntie Claire, who would just glare at me every now and again and go, "Have you got a boyfriend?" And they wanted to marry me. It was all that, the marrying off the children, the cousins and uncles and aunts. It was a classic, complete sort of environment, which fascinated me but shocked me. But my grandmother, my grandparents had an arranged marriage. So my grandfather prayed without stopping and my grandmother had affairs. And it was like watching a real picture of something. I'm never quite sure what, but my grandfather never stopped praying. And my grandmother took me to her bedroom one day and she was covered in beautiful makeup and she said, "Have men." I was only 14. And so I saw the range. It was a very healthy thing for me to see at an early age because I saw the range of Jews. I know.
There was a book, wasn't there a family tree book of the Jews of Manchester, of the Sephardim of Manchester?
Really?
And
Yes, by Lydia Collins.
has that been reprinted? Because I'd love to get a look at a copy.
I don't think it
Lydia
has.
who?
I've got a copy. Lydia is the librarian of the Jewish Genealogical Society of Great Britain. So you can meet her in London. She doesn't love technology, so I'm afraid we've never got her to talk. But she is a serious expert.
I'll get in touch with her because I became very sort of inspired by the wildness of my family, actually. That when I looked at my Ashkenazi ancestors who came from Lithuania, they were in South Africa and very straightforward. They were both pro and anti liberation for black people and all the rest of it. But my Sephardi family was mad as a hatter. It was wild. It was wonderful.
I see a question from Bernard there, David.
Can we sorry, because we're slightly running out of time. Anna was asking for a book or a source on genetic genealogy. I think Blaine Bettinger is generally regarded, his book is, I think, often regarded as the best on the subject.
And he's also speaking at the conference on Sunday night.
Yes, yes, that's right. We've really overextended. Should we just go to Jacob and then stop? Bernard's asked a question in the chat. Jacob.
Yeah, thank you, David. I just would like to make a short reference to Adam's remark about Baghdad, speaking about indigenous populations there. It may be true for Aleppo and Damascus. Baghdad is a very interesting story. In the midst of the 18th century, Baghdad went through two big plagues in 20 years' time, and most of the Jewish population left Baghdad, those who survived. And after the first return, and then after 20 years, the second escape, and the second return, many people who were not from Baghdad started flocking into Baghdad. So there you have a big mishmash. And I have to raise a red flag, despite the pride of the Baghdadi Jews that we lived there for 2,000 years. I don't know what DNA says about it. I know
Jacob?
what the say about it. Thank you.
Jacob?
Yes?
You don't have to wave any red flags. We've tested 150 men from Iraq.
Yeah.
All over Iraq, Kurdistan, and we find no geographic distribution worth noting. They may have come and gone, but we find that the Iraqi population and the Persian population, there's been a great deal of endogamy within that community. I'm not going to go back 2,000 years, but certainly I'll go back 1,500 years. There's definitely a native Babylonian population that's been there for a very long time.
So they were probably roving in the area.
You're welcome to come to my. I'm going to come to your talk. You'll come to my talk in London. Okay. I'll talk all about the Iraqis.
Deal done. Thank you. Okay, we have taken too much time. Thank you very much.
Take care, Jacob.
Thank you.
Could you repeat about the conference on Sunday, please, David? I saw it online and then did nothing.
Oh, well, the first of all, obviously there is this International Association of Jewish Genealogical Societies conference in London, and obviously there have been some pitchfork mobs in both the British and the Sephardic groups at not having sufficient coverage. I think. But we're trying to get it changed. I think 3 of the main Sephardic talks are all booked at the same time. Yeah, Blaine Bettinger, who wrote, oh gosh, what's it called? I have its image in my eye. Something Guide to Genetics or some sort. Guide to DNA Testing and Genetic Genealogy is an accessible book. I mean, I'm afraid I find that subject really difficult. Tom, do you, as ever, we've overextended. Just sorry, there's a question from Bernard. Have you tested Belafonte? I mean, do we know if the Belafontes and Belanfantes are definitely the same?
Yes.
Okay, that's beautiful.
Brilliant.
Brilliant.
And they're not, though. They're presumably not from Lisbon, as they claim. They're from sort of.
Well, they may have gone through Lisbon, but we know they sojourned in the Balkans.
Yeah.
But it's I can't look at it right now with the time we have available, but the Iberian story is plausible, but we know for a fact that they were in the Balkans.
Yeah. Right. Shall we wind up, Tom? Unless I'm really sorry, people on YouTube. We haven't really had time to get to you, but if you want to become patrons, then next time hopefully we can answer. Ton, we're back in 2 weeks, and as usual, I can't remember who our speaker is in 2 weeks. So can you?
Yes. I can't remember either.
Well, they're excellent. Whoever they are, they're absolutely excellent.
Thank you, our patrons, for with us here today, and thank you to our YouTube viewers. I'm sorry we couldn't get to your questions, and we will be here again in 2 weeks' time. Thank you all, and
Goodbye, and thank Adam, especially thank you for helping us with the questions.
yes.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.